On episode 3, we took you through the fascinating world of forensic genealogy and how it was used with the Canal Murders DNA to lead to an arrest in the case. Bryan Patrick Miller, the zombie hunter, is charged with the murders of both Angela Brasso and Melanie Burness. But in episode 1, we told you 5 young women were found dead. One of those a teenager who may be connected to all of this as well. Host Brianna Whitney picks up the story here.
Brandy hadn't come back yet. Right away, they had taped off my whole apartment. They were questioning everybody who lived there. When I met with the police, you know everything, and do you want to know? And he pulled her in the house, started stabbing her. She was alive for all that. Then he slit her throat and killed her. I honestly felt like I would live my entire life and die and never know what happened to her.
This is True Crime Arizona, The Zombie Hunter.
A note before we dive into this episode, we want to warn you there are graphic details discussed. Listener discretion is advised.
I would say that we were sisters, little best friends, you know, thick as thieves, but we also were like sisters and picked on each other or whatever. I was 11, she was 13.
Spring was just turning to summer in Phoenix. It was May of 1992. The girls were at the ages where they still loved to play together. Even though Kristen Dennis was a couple years younger, she felt very protective over her big sister, Brandy Myers.
She was in special ed classes, so I kind of felt like the bigger sister. And, you know, I don't know, she was more timid and naive and all that than I was, even though I was younger.
When you say she was in like special education classes, did she struggle with certain disabilities?
She had learning disabilities, absolutely. Like a lot of people say like she was brain damaged, and I don't like that. She was fine. She was a slow learner. You know, that was her disability.
Their family lived in the Sunny Slope area of Phoenix. There were a lot of kids around to play with. To Kristen and Brandy, things seemed great. They didn't need a lot to have fun.
What was your guys' childhood like growing up where you did?
In the apartments that we last lived in, I'd say it was any normal childhood. Seemed like, you know, pretty much in the 90s, you know. We all played outside, you know, climbed trees, you know, ran around. Nobody really hung out in your house, and you pretty much came inside when the street lights came on.
At the time, did you feel safe?
I did. I was blissfully unaware. I didn't know it was dangerous or considered like the hood, you know. We just played like it was anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, that was your home and
right.
Played outside like kids.
Right.
That was the best part of childhood, pure innocence. But at 11 years old, Kristen experienced that for the last time.
I still miss her every day. You know, there's not a day I don't think of her. Wish she was here.
Can you take us back to the day that Brandy disappeared in May of '92? What was she doing, and what do you remember from that day?
So it's May 26, '92, and her and I were going to go collect the money for this book drive or bookathon that she had done. So the bookathon was like, you read X amount of pages and we give you X amount of dollars. So we had gone through the neighborhood, and our allowed grounds to stomp around was between our house and our school, which is 4 blocks. So that was as far as we were allowed to go. These were the houses we would knock on for all of our fundraising through the school, and schools did that all the time. You sold candy, you sold books, you know, you did all sorts of different things going door to door, and there was never anything about this isn't safe, or make sure you have an adult, or do a buddy system, or, you know, any of that. There were none of that, and it was just like, send your kids out. So Brandy and I were previously, a couple weeks before, had went around the neighborhood, door to door, and we got pledges. And then she read the books, and now it's time to collect this money. So I was gonna go with her. You know, it was after school, so, you know, it's getting on in the day. I was gonna go with her, but a boy I like came over, so I was like, I don't wanna go, you know. And then I told her she was a nerd and I couldn't be seen with her, like maybe my friends would see her. And those were the last words that anybody who loved her ever spoke to her. And they really haunted me most of my life.
Kristen knew Brandy wasn't going far. She figured she'd be back soon. Kristen watched from the top of their apartment balcony as Brandy headed out.
I watched her go around the corner and there were tree groves there. So she passed in between them and I saw her in that moment, and then that was the last time I saw her.
So that was a route you two would walk all the time to and from school, right?
Absolutely. We walked that way every single day, back and forth to school. It was no big deal.
When did you know something was wrong?
I'd say when my mom got home and Brandy hadn't come back yet, you know, she was gone for several hours, probably 3 or 4.
Well, we have a little girl, and we know how we'd feel if something happened to her, so he's out looking for theirs to help them.
The clock ticked on. 4 hours. 5 hours.
Oh, you will go the same route.
6 hours. 10 hours. Brandy hadn't been seen anywhere. It was an all-out effort to find the 13-year-old.
How long did the searches go on for? I mean, this gained a lot of publicity in the Phoenix area at the time.
I mean, certainly through the night. You know, right away they had taped off my whole apartments. They had all sorts of squad cars. They had helicopters and police dogs, and they were questioning everybody who lived there. They were questioning people surrounding the area and just trying to come up with what had happened.
Kristen said within the first day of her disappearance, another girl told authorities she had been with Brandy and they went somewhere else. Authorities went down that path investigating her claims, only to find they weren't true. She was never with Brandy that day.
This little girl was actually making this story up. Yeah, so she's just trying to gain attention from the situation, and so that's what she did. And unfortunately, it really hurt my sister's chances to be found. Like, I don't believe that she would have been found alive at that time, you know, but I definitely think she might have been able to be found.
Then, nothing. Not just for years, nothing for decades. Brandy was never found. There were no new leads and no new evidence. Kristen grew up, became an adult, and a mom without her big sister. January of 2015, that's when everything changed.
When did he come on the radar for you and police in a possible connection to Brandy's disappearance?
2015. So when this came out and when I met with the police, it wasn't even them telling me that this is a possibility. This is what happened.
They were sure of it.
Without doubt. They said, you don't need to wonder anymore.
Phoenix police detectives believe they have solved 2 cold cases of young women being murdered 20 years ago.
Detectives have been working through the night, overnight, searching the home of the man they just arrested.
Kristen watched the news along with everyone else. A longtime Phoenix mystery finally solved. Bryan Patrick Miller had been arrested for the murders of 22-year-old Angela Barrasso and 17-year-old Melanie Bernis in 1992 and 1993. Police said DNA linked him to both homicide scenes. What Kristen didn't know was that in 1992, Bryan Patrick Miller was her and Brandy's neighbor.
Did you both know who Bryan Patrick Miller was at that time?
No, you know, I think we were oblivious to him, but if I, you know, speaking to the police now and detectives now, like, he would just be around.
In fact, his house was just 2 doors down from where Brandy was last seen fundraising before she disappeared.
Do you remember seeing him at all?
I don't remember ever paying any attention. Like, he was 19 at the time and we were 11 and 13. Like, you know, we weren't looking. We were only playing and like thinking about child things, you know.
Just because Miller was arrested for the Canal Murders didn't mean there was any connection to Brandy's disappearance. But then Kristen got a call from Phoenix police to come talk to them, and they posed a question to her.
We know everything, and do you want to know? Like they had to like give me a warning before they even told me, because it was all super, you know, horrible, and, you know, are you sure you want to know? And I waited all my life to know. I want to know.
Detectives had received brand new information they'd never heard before about Bryan Patrick Miller, and possibly about Brandy.
They tell me every detail, what he did to her.
What did they say?
They told me that first of all, let's back this up. Now, they say we know everything we know now because when this man was arrested, and they sidebar and they tell me about Angela Brasso and Melanie Bernas, okay? And then they tell me a little bit about him. And they say when he was arrested, and I don't even like to say his name, so most of the time I don't. When he was arrested, and they're like, you know, people started coming out and telling us stuff. So his ex-wife, Amy, came forward and gave us these confessions that he made to her, like during their time that they were married. She tells the police, he tells me the story about a girl who came to his door. And when she knocked at the door, he saw it as a perfect opportunity to act.
According to police records, detectives sat down with Miller's ex-wife, Amy, for a long interview. She told them quite a bit about her ex-husband, things he told her while they were living in Washington. She said Miller told her that most women he found attractive, he would have the desire to hurt or kill. He told her blondes and redheads would fit most descriptions of these women, and quote, young, very young. She said Miller told her he stabbed a woman somewhere on a bike trail on a bridge. He told her the girl was walking when he stabbed her, but that she survived, so he stabbed her again, then ran away. Amy told detectives she thought he was on his bike when this happened, but he wouldn't go into any more detail on that incident. But she recalled a story even more specific and haunting, something she originally thought was just a fantasy of his. Miller told her that before they moved to Washington, he had murdered a young girl that he believed was 15 or 16 and mentally disabled. Miller told Amy the girl had come to his apartment by mistake, trying to deliver Girl Scout cookies. The next details are horrific, and Kristen's account of them from detectives matches the police report nearly word for word.
He said she was doing some sort of fundraising, and he pulled her in the house, started stabbing her. So she was alive for all that, and then he slit her throat and killed her, and that's what killed her. But like, he wanted to keep doing things to her, so he wanted to put her in the bathtub. And like, can you imagine telling your wife this or hearing this from your husband?
No.
I can't. So he tells her that he wanted to keep doing things to her body, so he put her in the bathtub, and he intended to fill it with cold water to slow down her decomp and her bleeding. And he was so excited, like that was his best description, like from taking her life, that he mistakenly turned on the hot instead of the cold. So that sped up her decomp, and it sped up her smelling and bleeding and all of that. So he wasn't able to do all that to her, whatever he wanted to do.
Amy then told detectives Miller said he chopped up the girl's body and threw it away.
Then he stored her in his trash can until the trash ran the next day. When he put the trash can out on the curb, again, his neighbors are like, dude, your trash can smells like death. And he's like, yeah, there's rotten meat in there, you know? And like, I guess that's kind of brilliant, because nobody's gonna look in a trash can that has rotten meat. Like, who would do that? Nobody wants to do that. So nobody looked.
The girl's body went to the landfill. Amy told officers Miller said he killed her because the opportunity literally came knocking at the door. Detectives were sure that little girl was Brandy.
And I'm just like, my mind is absolutely blown. Like, I literally went 23 years of my life knowing nothing. She vanished without a trace. And now it's like, boom, Criminal Minds, the worst thing you could possibly imagine.
How does it make you even feel knowing that, based on what police told you, it was that gruesome?
I mean, it breaks my heart, you know? It makes me feel like, man, what if only I had been there? You know, I was the tough one, I was the mouthy one or whatever, the one who would sense this is dangerous, let's get out of here. It's haunting, but knowing nothing, I mean, I'm sure you hear that from every missing person's family. Knowing nothing is the worst. Well, I'd say a couple weeks ago or maybe a month ago, for the first time, I imagined her. I don't know if I can explain that right, but when I'm imagining that happening and I can't do anything, at no point was I ever her in that room. You know what I mean? I'm just outside looking at it happen.
Like a third party, but
right.
This is the first time you actually felt the victim as if you were her in that moment.
Right, and it's even more heartbreaking. Like, she didn't deserve that. She didn't deserve that.
The Phoenix Police Department believed it had enough circumstantial evidence for a conviction, so they recommended first-degree murder charges for Bryan Patrick Miller in the presumed death of Brandy Myers.
There's nothing there of the physical evidence, but what we do have is Amy, the ex-wife, and she's willing to testify that he told her all this, and she came forward about it. We have eyewitnesses that placed Brandy 2 doors down from his house, knocking at their door last, and then walking in the direction of his house.
In your mind, from 0% chance to 100%, how sure are you that Bryan Patrick Miller killed your sister?
I don't have a doubt in my mind. And the Phoenix Police Department put that to rest in my mind.
I asked the Maricopa County Attorney's Office to do an interview with me about why they won't charge Bryan Patrick Miller with Brandy's death or disappearance, but they declined the interview request.
I can't just let it go. I wish I could. I do. I wish I could just let it go, and I can't. I keep trying. Every time I'm knocked down, every time they turn down the case, I'm like, you know what? What am I doing? I'm not looking for any kind of like extra time. Like, as the Myers family or Brandy's representatives, I'm not seeking time or the death penalty. I'm seeking an impact statement. That's all we want. That's all I need.
Kristen says police told her it's up to her to continue pressure for charges in Brandy's case. She is her sister's voice and fiercest advocate. It's taken a lot for her to keep up the fight while still trying to support her own family.
I wasn't tech savvy. I didn't text. I didn't have Facebook. I didn't have any of that. I didn't have a smartphone. I didn't want a touch screen. Like, I was like, I'm not that person.
So you had to basically learn how to do all that.
I had to learn all this and like learn how to try to network and how to do interviews like this, and you know, how to be able to tell this story multiple times without crying through the whole thing. Every day I feel like, what could I do more? You know, and when I'm busy with my own life, I feel bad. Like, what couldn't I do more? You know, I don't want to live that way forever. Why they can't just give it to us, I don't know.
I don't think you give yourself enough credit that 29 years ago she disappeared, and 29 years later you're sitting right here fighting for your sister.
I feel like someone has to, man. You know, I wish it could be somebody else, but it's not. And, you know, I also feel like, what wouldn't she do for me? You know, if it was the other way around, I feel like she'd be in this chair.
Kristen plans to go to the Canal Murders trial, at least some of it. She wants to support Angela Brasso and Melanie Bernis's families. If anybody can understand what they've been through, it's her. She plans to continue pushing the Maricopa County Attorney's Office for action on her sister's case. At this point, Kristen doesn't care if she wins or loses in court. She just wants her day in court and wants to look Bryan Patrick Miller in the eyes and speak to him directly.
It's just heartbreaking to me on the daily, and I just want it to be over. You know, I want to say that I did everything I could, even if I don't win, as long as I try. And I want a chance to say, you know what, you took everything from me, and my mother is broken inside because of you. And I was lost for years, but you know what, you don't have power over my life anymore.
Next time on episode 5 of True Crime Arizona, The Zombie Hunter.
And as we got closer, you know, I don't know, I just had a bad feeling. And so I turned around before he'd get to me, and I thought, I'm just going to go back. I'm just going to get this run done and get out of here. And that's when I saw Angela come out and come up the trail. And she seemed like she was kind of hurrying, coming fast. The last time that I saw her, she was going south on the canal on the west side, and he was south on the right side.
True Crime Arizona, The Zombie Hunter is hosted by me, Brianna Whitney.
And me, Morgan Lowe. Sergio Hernandez is the producer.
This episode was edited by Mike Abbott. It's a production of Arizona's Family, CBS 5, 3TV, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.